And the number of orphans represented by this group that we want to adopt are 76 out of the 300 represented here today. We're going to take a moment. Some of you know that we had a briefing with the State Department yesterday, and Elaine Lawrence is going to come up and talk to us about that briefing for anyone that did not attend.
Yesterday, approximately 30 families met with the Department of State. We were given the blanket statement that Ukraine is not open to adoptions at this time, something we all already are fully aware of. Some of the key points that came from that meeting were that at the beginning of the meeting, the Department of State was really unsure and unclear about the objectives of the meeting. In my opinion, they seemed a little unprepared for the discussion that was about to take place because in their minds, adoptions are closed, case is closed. They didn't have to speak with us anymore. But the 30 families that were representative there united and educated the State Department on exactly what our objectives were. We let them know that we are a united front. They got to hear issues that the children are facing. And they also provided a clear picture of our concerns. I think it was eye-opening for the State Department because the families were able to identify specific parameters of which children should be included in our ask. We told them it was not every child we were trying to bring home. It was a very specific number with very specific details. The families were very generous in educating the Department of State. I think our point got across. I think a lot of eyes were open. I think ears were listening to us. I think we bent ears, and I saw that yesterday, and it was an amazing and beautiful thing to see. Families were united in reiterating that we're not seeking adoption. We're not asking for hosting to be opened up again. We're looking for a solution to opportunities to bring our children home and legal pathways to bring our children home temporarily until the war is over, and then, of course, respecting Ukraine's sovereignty, we'll adopt the children when that time comes. But that is not what we were asking. Thanks to the families, brainstorming opportunities and doors were opened. The State Department was able to take in what the families were speaking about. They were able to reiterate what the objectives were, and they were clear in communicating to us that we were being heard. We were no longer just a silent little minority in the corner or 5 people here, 2 people here. We're 200 families, 300 children strong, and they heard us. They understand that we need to create some type of pathway and solutions to bringing the United States and the Ukrainian governments together. And we need to solidify the assurances and agreements that would reunite, I'm thinking of those families, that would reunite our children with American families again. We are making a difference, y'all. Do not give up. They are hearing us. And yesterday's Department of State meeting may have started a little rocky, but it came out, I believe, with some positive future outcomes. So thank you for showing up, and thank you for continuing to fight for our kids.
We're going to move into the discussion of the conditions and challenges that the children are currently facing. We'd like to invite up Justin Hayslett as a humanitarian worker, a founder of Legacy Refuge, and someone who's been on the ground and been to a lot of these shelters.
Thank you. Hi guys, I'm so thankful for y'all coming out.
We've been involved in orphan care in Ukraine for over 7 years. We have hosted as well, and we are in the process. We're stuck as well, like you guys, but we also run this organization. And we have spent, since the war started, we have spent the last year and a half responding to the needs of these kids in Ukraine, but also mostly the ones who've been evacuated. Because one thing we realized early on is in many ways those kids are being forgotten because their physical needs are being taken care of by the governments. So in a way they've been kind of overlooked by the world. Like, oh, they're good. And so what we've seen is a lot of the kids, they're good situations, bad situations in terms of conditions. Like if you went into some orphanages in Austria, you'd be like, this isn't terrible. Or you go into some in other places and you're like, this is terrible. But what is baseline across all, they're not in families. And you're seeing issues that are being compounded. And over the last year, we've been to these kids over and over again. We go to the same orphanage groups to build relationship. And we have seen the level of hope being diminished every time we come, especially for the kids who have families waiting for them. And I want to refer back to something that President and First Lady Zelensky said a few months ago. They made a big announcement, and they had said that the most important thing for these kids is families, for any kids in Ukraine. They said they believe that every kid belongs in a family, and therefore they are going to, their goal in Ukraine is to abolish the internat system, the public orphanage system, so that the kids can be in families, foster care families, and because families are the most important. And what we're seeing across the board in all of our travels, and we have traveled a lot. This winter, we were in Europe with our family of 6 and our team. We traveled over 7,000 miles and visited over 14 orphanage groups, bringing Christmas presents, spending time with orphanage directors, and seeing the conditions of the kids. And the kids who have families, they are starting to lose hope. And when kids lose hope, we know, first of all, you're seeing depression, you're seeing a lot of bad behaviors, which they wouldn't normally do. Even in our daughter, we're like, this isn't you, girl. What are you doing? You're not going to behave this way. Come on, hold on to hope. And so we're seeing that. And the other thing that is very clear to us is almost unilaterally, directors and caregivers of the kids come and talk to us and they ask, can you please help us find a way to get these kids to their families? They know that it is best. The directors know, the caregivers know. And then there's been these blocks to get them there. And so I have seen a lot of these conditions. And I've seen these kids, and I've talked to them, and I've talked, even connected to the families, and you see this love bond that's there, and you see this connection that's there that does carry so much in their heart, but when they do start to lose hope, it goes really bad. And so I want to just, for whoever is listening, I know you parents know, but anybody not listening, this is crucial. We thought it was going to be 2 months, 3 months max, and now we're looking at a year and a half. And I hope I don't have to go back to Europe for Christmas programs, because I hope these kids are in their homes. But if we do, I want to know that these kids are being fought for as hard as possible to get them united with the families who absolutely love them. And again, I want to go back to the fact that you're going to hear bad stories, but then there's these stories where, you know, and you might have gone to orphanages, you're like, okay, this is not a bad actual condition, but the condition that we want to really get to is the fact that kids belong in families. And over, I don't know if you guys realize this, but a lot of the directors and teachers have been evacuated with the kids, and they are the same staff in some cases that have been on 24/7, 365. There's one orphanage group that we know of that has 70 kids, and there was 7 caregivers. And they're on 24/7, 365. I know how irritated I get with my kids, and we have 4. And I can tag team with my wife. You know, and so you can imagine the level of frustration and irritation and exhaustion that can be coming from 7 caregivers to 70 kids. In many ways, those kids are raising themselves. There's a lot of things that run rampant, even in a good setting in terms of a nice building. And I just want to keep going back. The building itself doesn't matter. The condition of food isn't what's important. Even if you have the best building in the world and you have 7 caregivers with 70 kids, the kids are raising themselves and getting into mischief that we all know is not good. And so these same kids have families that would take them in a heartbeat. And the other thing that we're starting to see over and over again is as these kids get to 15, 16, 17 years old, they're being sent back into Ukraine. And that is what's breaking our heart more than anything. Because you have these kids who have such beautiful potential. They have a family fighting for them and waiting for them that they could come and have a bedroom and a home and a future. And now they're being sent back from Europe into Ukraine, where they're going to get stuck. The men could potentially get conscripted for war, and their bottom line, they're in a war zone condition with a family who's waiting for them. So this is so important, you guys, for us to continue to fight, to build, to get politicians on our side, so that each of these kids can get to our families. Whether, as we know, eventually we want it to be adoption, but for now, we know the safest, best place for them is to be in a caring, loving environment instead of being transferred all over different countries back to Ukraine and being raised in an orphanage. Thanks so much.
At this time, we'd like to invite Kim to Blecourt up the front. Kim? Kim's organization is called Nourished Hearts, but she has adopted from Ukraine. She has worked across Ukraine during wartime, has a lot of relationships there. She is an author, and she's here to tell us what she's seen on the ground in some of these locations.
Hi to everyone, especially those I haven't had the privilege of meeting yet. We've been working in Ukraine since the adoption of our son. I'll back up just a minute. I know where you're at. Our adoption took years. And I spent the last year in the Odessa Oblast of Ukraine for that adoption, fighting for the child who had already been given to me out of the orphanage. But a corrupt prosecutor stopped us from getting us visa to return home. So my husband and daughter came home from Ukraine. We thought, well, I'd be there only a couple weeks finishing. A year later, I got to join them again. And the conditions I'm seeing in Ukraine now, they're not able to be able to give these children care. They're even filling up orphanages with the new orphans that are coming in with very little to no supervision. It's not 7 to 70. And they're not officially recognized, and yet they're filling them up again. So there's probably more orphans, obviously, now than we would even have numbers on, because nobody's counting. They're in war. The orphanages I've gone to in the other countries where Ukraine orphans are being hosted keep begging for help. The ones that I went to in Italy and Germany and Poland, they kept asking me, where are the Americans? Can you bring some Americans back with you? Can you help us do this? I really liked Steve's encouragement yesterday about getting that bilateral agreement made between Ukraine and the United States, because I think that's your best chance of getting the United States and Canada and some other countries outside the EU that understand Ukraine just wants to be a part of the EU. And they've limited the scope of who can help care for their children based on that. And it will allow us, with that agreement in place, to be able to offer help from for these orphans from these EU countries that are getting so tired, right? Nobody expected it to last this long. But as I was talking to many of you yesterday, the thing I noticed is I recognized me and you. And I'm on the other side of this now. I'm 10, 13 years away from it. So I can look back and remember the frenzy almost that I was in during that adoption period. Because all I could think about, all I could focus on, all I could pray about was the completion of that adoption and to get home again and to be with my family and to stop learning Russian on the fly. Oh my goodness. And I just wanted to share a few things with the families, just real briefly before I let you return to your discussion, is that I know you're getting weary. And I too want to encourage you to move forward. Celebrate times that you can celebrate as hard as it's going to be for you. Take the moment to make preparations. Keep feathering the nest. Keep doing those kind of activities. And the one thing that really helped me get through that year in Ukraine alone was daydreaming about what I was going to do with my son when we got home. And it was at our summer place and him catching frogs because he was enthralled with frogs. I found that out while we were in Ukraine together. And seeing that daydream came true, it was one of the most special times in my life. So I want to encourage you to keep moving forward. Don't be afraid to work with others. If you're not already fully engaged with Jen and Ukraine 300, Care 300, make sure you get involved even to a higher degree. This is going to be really good, if nothing else, for your soul. And while I was living in Ukraine, I got involved with helping pass out food and drink and personal hygiene kits to the street kids, the ones that were living under the manhole covers. And I got to tell you, it was a diversion. It really does help. I hope you can hear me in this. And the last thing I want to tell you is make sure you're taking self-care. Don't hide, because you're going to want to. Continue to participate. There are other biological family members that need you. And it will really help you to talk to somebody that you can trust. Whether it's therapy or not is your call. You know the level that you're at. But reach out to someone and let them help you. I know you think nobody can possibly understand, but I'm telling you it's going to help you. And before I leave, the Bible has many blessings, but the greatest blessing of all is found in the book of Numbers. And I'd like to leave you with that blessing. May the Lord bless and keep you. May he make his countenance shine upon you and bring you peace.